Hey there, YouTubers. Today we are going to go over something that people have been asking me to make a video on, and I've been kind of slacking on it, and I saw a couple people have posted videos, and it shows really horrible ways to do it. Not going to pick on anyone, name any names or anything, but it's how to make a master mold of something. So for this project, we're going to be making a master mold of this particular piece, a 4x4 tile, which of course is going to be pushed together a little bit. But this is going to be for an order to use with the new Dwarven Forge Kickstarter for the cities and that. And I'm going to be making about 6 or 7 different master molds for my city. So I'm going to have some where it's going to be a 4x4. There's going to be some where the centerpieces here are going to be gone. There's going to be like a sidewalk, and I'll do like a design in the center. And I'll do a couple pieces, something like this, where the middle is empty. That way I'll be able to make like some dirt and do some grass in the middle, do like a little park or like a little planted area. But today we're going to go over just the basics of how to do a master mold itself. So bear with me 1 second here. Let me go ahead and grab a couple things. Now to do that, we're going to need a couple things before we get started. We're going to need to know what it is we're molding. So in this case, we're going to be making basically a mold of this particular piece, right? So we have that ready. We're going to need some type of glue or some type of adhesive to hold it down. For that, I'm going to use tacky glue, Aleene's, which is a very nice glue. It's easy to clean up, water soluble. Plus, you can normally find it at Walmart, things of that nature. I think a bottle this size is anywhere from $2 to $4, depending on when you get on sale. You're also going to want something to glue your pieces down to. Now, for this, some people use cardboard. Cardboard, though, has a tendency sometimes to warp. This is just clear plexiglass. As you can see, it's very easy to clear, so you can see through it. So we can see on the bottom, make sure everything's glued nice and tight. And then I have some pieces of like a clear acrylic we're going to use to go around the outsides, and we're going to use a hot glue gun to go around the edges. So I'm going to show you guys how to do this step by step, and then I'm going to show you guys the proper pouring method, not just pouring a cup in there and letting the air bubbles go out. So like I said, we're going to break this down step by step, so bear with me 1 second. Like I said, this is step 1. Just make sure you have everything ready, and we're going to go ahead and go to step 2. I'll come back once everything's glued down. Alright guys, I'm back. I have everything with preliminarily glued down to the base itself, as you can see. Let's go ahead and flip it over. Now you notice you don't need a whole lot of glue. Now you see there's still a little bit of light shining there and a couple little spots coming through. But now what we want to do is we want to make sure everything is nice and tight. Now there's a couple different ways you can do this. I saw a picture where someone was just taking like stuff like this and just kind of tapping it. And there's actually a much better way. Now this is where the 4x4 square is going to come into place. What we're going to do is we're just going to press extremely hard. I'm going to go ahead and rotate it. We'll press again. I'm not sure if you saw, there's a little bit of movement there where they slid together just a little bit. Anyway, I just want to do that one more time here. I just want to double check one last time. Okay, now I'm not sure how well the camera's going to pick up on that. Let me see if I can scoot down. Now ideally, if you know you have something that's completely straight, which these aren't because I cut these myself, you should be able to hold them up like that, and you should have a completely straight edge. That is if you know you have a true edge. If you have a level or an angle, like I said, you should be able to hold it up there completely straight. Now this is a completely 4x4 platform, so if I hold it up there, it should be almost completely perfect all the way around. Just a little off there. So yeah, so now if we hold it up, see if I can do it very gently here, make sure nothing moves. You should be able to see, move this here. Not much in the way I like. There's still a couple little spots. So we're going to go ahead and do that one more time just so we can make sure everything's nice and straight there. Alright, so nothing's moved on us. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this dry for about, roughly about an hour or so. Just so I can make sure the glue is nice and firmly set. And what I will do is I will go ahead and put that on there. Let me go ahead and get my dice container. Just add just a little bit of weight there. There we go. So like I said, this dice container is maybe about 2 pounds or so, completely full of dice. Let's see if I can zoom back out there. Oh, wrong way. So yeah, so nothing very too exciting. Like I said, we're going to let this sit for approximately about an hour or so. So my wife has a honey-do list for me to do right now, and what we'll do is we'll come back at that point, and then we'll go to the next step. The one thing I did want to point out when you are doing something of this nature. Now, some of these I have are from Her Starts, and there's a couple of them ones that I've made myself. So I'm not sure how well you'll be able to tell from the pictures. But whenever you do these, you want to make sure that your stones, you don't want to make sure you have the exact same ones next to each other. You don't want a definitive pattern or anything like that. Now, a couple though, what I did is I actually took a Dremel, I dremeled some stones out, and I made a couple other custom patterns. So instead of having, I believe it's 6 different of these field stones, tablets, or little pieces. Let's see if I can get a piece of paper here to hold them all. So instead of there being 6, I believe there's now 12 different ones. See if I can hold those up here. I think it should be one of each. So that should be all 12 of the patterns. So yeah, so I added a couple, like I said, you kind of tell in a couple of the pieces like over here where some of them have been customized a little bit. But that way just kind of break up the pattern. Now when you do this, there's a couple different things you can do. If you want to have a very, very definitive pattern, you could technically use one block of the same one every single one. That way every single step looks exactly the same. In my case, what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to have what's called kind of like a keystone. So if you see where this one, where you have the center little stone that sits upright. So what I'm doing is on each one of mine, I'm going to have a keystone kind of like this. Oh, I'm sorry, more like this. Or actually, I think it's backwards. So my pattern is going to be something sort of like this. So it's not going to be very noticeable at first, but if you see, you have the one straight, one straight, one straight on the very edges there. So what's going to happen is, even though I may have, 12 of these tiles, once everything is all laid out, what's going to happen is there's going to be a pattern when I lay them out. Now these certain keystones I can paint a different color, like if I want to paint those like a little bit lighter tan color or maybe just like a black color. So once those are laid out in my cityscape, that's going to be how I'm going to measure movement. So just to give you guys an idea, when you're laying these out, like I said, definitely plan ahead as to how, if you go to focus there, definitely plan out as how you want your street itself to be laid out. Obviously, if you're doing sidewalks or something like that, where you're only having something like this, and you're going to have some dirt in between, you might not need to have quite that much of a grid, but a little bit of food for thought there. So bear with me one second. I'll go ahead and pause this, and I will come back once the tile down there at the bottom is nice and dried, so we can go ahead and begin the molding process. I'll be back in a little bit, guys. Alright guys, it is Dungeon Master Mark back again. We are now to step 3. Step 2 should be now completely dry. So as you can see, everything is nice and square. And we just want to double check again. Make sure all 4 sides nice and square, no large gaps. Just like that. Alright, so for step 3, we're going to go ahead and make our mold box. For the type of mold we're going to make is what's called a cube mold, or some people also call it a drop mold. So what I'm going to use is 4 of the L-shaped acrylic pieces. That way we can make a box, and then we will use some gator clamps to clamp them together. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and line them up kind of in a rough shape here. Something sort of like this. We're going to go ahead and do a rough clamp. That way we can get our size to exactly the specifications we want it at. Alright. Well, sure how well that's going to show up. Let me go ahead and squeeze it down to where we want it. Now, depending on the material you're using, you want to make sure you have about anywhere between 1/4 of an inch to about 1/8 inch all the way around the sides of your mold or your master itself. So right there, we're almost at about 1/8 of an inch there. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and back this off just a little bit. Make sure everything's lined up here. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I have the hot glue gun already preheated. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start couple corners of the mold. And you want to be extremely careful. Make sure your mold box itself does not move around on you. That way you don't have any shifting or anything happens to the mold itself. I'm not sure how well it's going to show up on the video here, but you want to make sure you get all the way around the sides. That way none of the silicone leaks out. Obviously the silicone itself is the most expensive part of the process, so obviously you don't want to waste any. Go ahead and zip this side real quick. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and end the video, and I will go ahead and come back once we are ready to pour the silicone. Alright guys, we are now done with step 4, moving on to step 5. As you can see, the mold master is now ready for pouring of the silicone. I'm not sure how well it's going to show up here, but you can see all the way around the outside we have a slight little lip that goes all the way around. Now there's a couple things you can do. You can make sure that this is sealed if you don't want to make sure you grab too deep into the details. In my case, these are plaster, so I'm not worried about if they get broken during the demolding process. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to sprinkle just a little bit of cornstarch, in this case baby powder, which is essentially cornstarch. And we're just going to make sure we dust everything. That way it demolds nice and easy. So I'm going to do them back here. Let's go blow that out real quick. There you go. And now we have it. If I can get it to focus here. There we go. Should be nice and focused in. And you can see all the detail on the stonework there. Now at this point, if you did want to put some light sand in between stones to cover in some of the cracks, if you do not want the grid to show as much, you definitely can. The one thing you can always do, like a base coat of paint over all of these. That way it helps fill in some of the sealant and mold lines as well. That way you won't be able to see those if you don't wish to see the grid itself. So bear with me 1 second. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and get some silicone ready, and we'll go ahead and begin the pouring process. Alright everybody, we are now ready to go ahead and do the initial silicone pour. So as you can see, I actually have another piece of clear acrylic underneath the mold box itself for our cube mold, or for our box mold, just in case anything does spill out. Since I did hot glue everything, I did double check, so in theory nothing should be able to leak out. What we're going to do is we're just going to pop these down, just get a little bit of extra force, keep anything from seeping in between the pieces of acrylic. And now comes the important part, the silicone. This particular silicone, I have already degassed it. I've already mixed it extremely well. When it comes to choosing your silicone, you want to take a look at a couple things. Obviously, the first of those will be what type of manufacturer you use. There's probably maybe about 50 or 60 different main types of silicones you can get. This, of course, is going to be a silicone rubber base. This particular one, the tin cure, is a 10-to-1 mix ratio by weight. So in other words, you want to do it by grams or ounces, and you always want to make sure you measure by weight itself, not by volume. So since it is a tin silicone, or a silicate mix, during the temperature differences, it will expand and subtract. So you want to be extremely careful. Like I said, always measure by weight. Ideally, you want to use an electronic scale. You don't want to eyeball it, since you do need it to be very precise. So, like I said, this is one of the ones I sometimes use, Magic Mold. I'm going to be using a little bit different one today. This one comes out of pink. The one I'm going to be using is going to turn out of blue, similar to what Dwarven Forge and Bruce Hurst uses. And like I said, this one here I've already mixed for about 5 minutes or so. So you can see a nice and almost creamy consistency. Now, there's a couple different ways you can pour if you do use a vacuum chamber. You can just pour, put it in your vacuum chamber and vacuum the air out. In this case, what I'm going to do is what's called a high pour. And what that is, basically, I'm going to be pouring it from about 1 foot to 2 foot above the mold itself. That way, when the silicone actually hits, any type of air bubbles are going to break when they hit upon the actual mold itself. That way, it's going to flow into the crevices a little easier. Let me go ahead and get the mold ready. And we'll go ahead and start pouring. Now, you want to try to keep your container extremely still as you're pouring your silicone. You want it to pour itself into the crevices and any little nooks and crannies. finish pouring here. Yeah, so it should be almost finished there. Now once we get down to the very bottom here, we just want to make sure we turn the bowl, slide across the top there, keep anything extra from dripping off. Go ahead and get rid of that. Now you will notice a little bit of degassing when the bubbles hit. See if I can zoom in just a little bit there. You'll see where some of the bubbles are breaking the surface tension there. And that's going to be any of the little nooks and crannies where the bubbles kind of break themselves up. You can use a silicone release agent, just a light little spritz on top to break those off. The easiest method though, and cheapest obviously, just gently blowing them a little bit. As you can see, it breaks the bubbles, and you'll see where it slowly heals itself back up. As you can see right there, there's going to be a large bubble getting ready to pop there. If I can zoom in there. There you go. And it's not going to focus for us. That's all right, though. Let's go ahead and zoom back out there. Give it a second, go ahead and focus again. I apologize, my camera's taking a little bit longer to focus than normal there. Alright, let me go ahead and pause this for a second. There we go. Sorry about the technical difficulty there. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and zoom back in here for a second. There we go, and you'll see where most of the bubbles, the surface tension is now broken there. So we'll go ahead and give it one little more tug. We'll give it a little wiggle there. And that is it for now. All we're going to do now is we're going to let this sit aside. This particular mold at this depth, we're about 1/8 inch above the actual cast itself, so we're going to give it approximately 4 to 6 hours to set up there. And I will come back in about 6 hours so we can go ahead and check on the process. And now you'll see one more bubble there getting ready to degas. As you can see, it just healed itself back up. But yeah, like I said, what we'll do is we'll keep an eye on this for a few moments. That way we can make sure no other large bubbles appear. And we'll make sure it's all done, taken care of. Thanks for watching, guys. Hey guys, it is Dungeon Master Mark again. And I believe it's about 8:30ish in the afternoon now. And it's been a little bit over 5 hours or so. And we are ready to go ahead and pop the mold out. So first thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and take off these clips. And we'll go ahead and break this bad boy apart here. Alright, we can go ahead and get to this bottom piece here. Oops, sorry about that. Dropped a couple things there. Alright, so now by doing this, we should have an almost perfect mold. Sorry about that, the camera's trying to give me an update there. And as you'll see, didn't have very much leakage from around the sides, which is good. So some of that we'll be able to trim off. Alright, so there we have it. Now, they will have a little bit of stuff sticking there, but that's alright. We're actually going to go through and we're going to trim some of that up. Actually, this may take a few moments here. So bear with me 1 second. What I'll do is I'll pause this for a second and I'll come back once I have everything all cleaned up here. Alright guys, so I got most of the mold trimmed up there. And as you can see, I did a lot of trimming on the inside of the mold. I'm not sure how well it's going to pick that up there. A lot of the little higher areas, which actually I still see 1 or 2 left. All you're going to do is just going to trim those out. And what that's going to do is that's going to prevent any deep crevices in your mold itself. That way, obviously, we'll still have the grid itself. There we go, sorry about that. But we won't have any real deep crevices. So what that's going to do is going to make it a little bit stronger for the mold itself. And we're not going to have any really deep grooves. So, now, other thing you want to do, you want to go along the edges anywhere. There's still a little slight raised edge right there. And you just want to trim that off. And what we want to do is we want to make sure if there's any concaved area to the edge of the mold, we just want to make sure that's removed. Like I said, we want to make sure, and nothing is concave. We want everything to be nice and rounded off on the side. And what that's going to do, if there's a little bit of a raised edge, obviously the mold's going to have a little warp to it when it sits. Or in that case, sometimes like that. And what's going to happen is you're going to have where you have like an indentation in your mold, or depending on if it's the opposite, from where the sides kind of stick to the sides, your pieces aren't going to be completely level. So obviously we want it to be completely level. If you want to leave a little bit of solids on the side, you can cut these off the sides, but that doesn't really matter. Now, like I said, I've seen a couple other videos where people have done molds and they have these huge Tupperware dishes and you're wasting all this material. So you want to be extremely careful. Now, on my case, I did go a full 1/8 from the bottom as well, which is kind of overkill for a mold like this. But like I said, since I'm doing resin, like I said, I know it's going to suck some of the moisture out of that. So I'm not terribly worried about that. So, like I said, this was the final step here. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and cast something in the mold here in a little bit, just so we can get a final picture there. But that is it. That is basic mold making, guys. If you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to comment. Feel free to email me, let me know. I do custom molds for people as well, if any of you out there need help and you don't feel comfortable doing it. But hopefully this video has helped you go through the basic process of mold making and have a better, firmer grasp. Once you're done, as this one here is, ideally you should be able to set your mold down. And if you set a level on there, it should be completely level where the little bubble is, right like that one there is. Obviously, if you set it the other way, completely level also. Now, one thing, like I said, you can always check your table, which I know this one is because I use it all the time. But like I said, if everything is done properly, you've used a weight on top of it, you've checked everything to make sure it's nice and square, you should have an absolutely beautiful, perfect mold. There's not going to be any waste, and you're going to get a beautiful cast out of this. So thanks for watching, guys. I will try to go ahead and piece this together and get it posted up tonight. And once again, if you guys have any questions or you guys need help, feel free to email me or let me know. Thanks. Alright guys, one last final update. We now have the mold. It's already been cast in. It's been about 10-15 minutes, so we should be able to go ahead and pop it out. And there's the final product. So there we have our hybrid floor tile there. Like I said, I may do a little bit of non-slip backing there on the back, but like I said, this is the high tensile strength resin I use that is pretty damn near unbreakable. I mean, it's fine if you throw it across the room, nothing's going to happen to it. So I will probably do an updated video tomorrow of a couple of these bad boys painted up, and then hopefully once I get about 10 or 20 of them or so, we'll go ahead and do a real small little street scene. And then tomorrow I'm going to start working on some other tile combinations, and I've got 2 other custom tiles I'm going to add to this selection to bring it up to 14 tiles. And then we'll start on some waterway pieces and some more street pieces. So thanks for watching, guys. Bye-bye.